In the past few episodes of History Traveler, we have been exploring the area connected with the Battle of the Little Bighorn. In the first episode, we started off where Custer had his last encampment and moved to the area where he made some questionable decisions to divide his forces. In the second episode, we were able to gain some special access to private ground to look at where Reno had his disastrous charge. In this episode, we'll be following the retreat of Reno across the Little Bighorn and up to the high ground to an area that is now known as Reno-Benteen Hill. We'll be linking up with Jocko Willink and Leif Babin and the other members of Echelon Front to explore this area where elements of the 7th Cavalry under Reno and Benteen put up a desperate defense against multiple attacks by Native Americans under the leadership of Sitting Bull. Again, we are overlooking Reno Creek to the south of where the Battle of Little Bighorn took place. And this is where Benteen is going to be following, Custer and Reno. And again, he gets this message that says, Benteen, come on, big village, be quick. P.S., bring packs. And this message kind of confuses Benteen a little bit, and he doesn't know what he should do. Should he be quick and, move along and maybe help with whatever's going on? Or does he need to wait for the pack train, which is dragging way behind, and, get supplies up to these beleaguered men? So he ends up sending a guy named Martin back to the pack train to try and hurry them up. And as they move forward down Reno Creek here, well, they start to hear and see, people running around. They hear gunfire. And Benteen is going to end up following Custer's route and take the high ground above the Little Bighorn River. So I've now made my way up to what is called Reno Hill or Reno-Benteen Hill. And as the men from Reno's 3 companies are making their way across the river, they come up this draw right here behind me and find their way right up here on this high point where they can kind of escape some of the fury that they've experienced down below. We have shifted up to the top of the ridge, and from up here you can really see things clear and kind of get an idea of what happened with Reno's charge and retreat. So just to give you an idea of where we are facing kind of to the west right now. And if I zoom in, if you see that red building in the distance, well, that's where we were, showing where Reno's charge had taken place. Just as the road kind of dips out of view to the right is where he had dismounted. And then the troops are going to be overrun. Again, they're going to be hitting the left flank, and they're going to make their way all the way around here. And right here in this pocket that you see in front of us, just on the other side of the Little Bighorn, this is where the men from Reno's detachment are going to be trying to cross the river, and it is going to be an absolute bloodbath down there. The river was literally turning red. So you have Crazy Horse leading these warriors in their attack on Reno's men, and the ones who are able to make it across start trying to get their way up these little draws and ravines, ultimately making their way to what we now know as Reno Hill, or Reno-Benteen Hill. By the time Reno and what was left of his command made it up here to the top of the hill, it was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon on June 25th. And he had suffered about 40 killed. There were more who were wounded. There are several men who were still down in the valley hiding. And this whole time, people are wondering, where's Custer? But that's not a question that would be answered for a little while. And in the meantime, there was still some pretty intense fighting that was going to be taking place right up here on the heights at Reno-Benteen Hill. So off in this direction right here, this is where Reno's men would have been coming up at around 4 o'clock on the afternoon of June 25th. And here where he ends up converging with Benteen's element. Now they have a monument. It says this area was occupied by troops A, B, D, G, H, K, and M, 7th U.S. Cavalry, and the pack train when they were besieged by the Sioux Indians June 25th and 26th of 1876. So when we think of, Custer and the Last Stand, we think of where, Custer himself and the men that he was with were wiped out to the north of here. But there was a bit of a stand that took place here on the south end of the battlefield too that we're going to take a look at. Here at the Reno-Benteen defense here on top of the hill, they have this nice little map that helps us kind of orient ourselves as to where we are. So obviously we are here. And you can see that the defense perimeter is not like a perfect circle or oval. It looks more like a frying pan. So you would have had Company B over here. Company M is also going to be up here on the second day. And then you get over here. This is going to be kind of like Company H area, right around the handle of the frying pan. We're going to go take a look at all of these spots. And then there's a barricade that's set up here. The horses and mules are in the middle. There's going to be a field hospital. But anyway, this gives you a general idea of what the defense perimeter looks like right over here on the south end of the battlefield. I'm standing at the top of the draw that leads down to the Little Bighorn, and we looked at this in the last episode, but I thought this would be a good opportunity to talk about setting priorities. So for the Native Americans, you have Crazy Horse and, again, about 600 of the 2,000 warriors who are going up against the 7th Cavalry. And once they drive Reno's men out of this area, and Reno's men are going to come up this draw right here, for the meantime, the Native Americans have achieved their objective. Their one singular objective is protect the village. Even though you have a lot of warriors who are acting independently, they all have a common goal. So once the threat has been driven off from the south, well, really just kind of as one, they move out and go back around as, kind of like this, I don't even know how to describe it, but just as a single-minded group, because there is a new threat to the north that they have to take care of. And again, their one objective is to protect the village. For the 7th Cavalry, these guys are all over the place. They all have different priorities. Custer, his priority is his own glory. Benteen, who knows what his priorities are. He seems kind of confused and maybe has a little bit of a grudge against Custer. Reno makes it up here to the top of the hill, and you would think that he would be thinking about, setting up a perimeter or trying to link up with Custer. But his priority is to go back down the draw to the river to try and find his aide Hodgson, who had been killed right there by the river. That seems like something that could have been taken care of later on. But Reno insists on going down, really burns some valuable time. And really, in hindsight, we can look at that as a poor decision where he placed the wrong thing as a priority in a very heated moment. All right, so here's what's nice about coming to EF Battlefield. Plentiful supply of Jocko Goes.
Now, do you see, remember where I told you that saddle of the V? Now see, it's more opened up now because our perspective has changed from this morning being over on 2-Bar Hill. So if we're gonna make a run for it, now I've been riding a pony since 09 in the morning. I've come all the way from the Crow's Nest. That's back there on that ridge line. That was my last known location of where we camped that night. I'm gonna go all the way. I'm gonna get into a massive gunfight down here in the Cottonwoods, and then I'm gonna run up here onto this hill. Now, maybe we should go all the way back. What do you think's gonna happen by this point in time? Is if, let's say I took everybody down by the Cottonwoods, we do like 100 burpees, and then we run up to here, and then I say, yeah, here's a drink of water, now we're going to the Wolf Mountains. You guys are not gonna be happy with JD, man, because about halfway out there, people are gonna be like, I'm out, I'm done. But when you get up to here, can Reno and these folks, is this defensible? It's high ground, and it's better than being down there. Matter of fact, anywhere is better than being down there if they're growing out of the ground. The problem is when Reno calls for this retreat, he's the first one out. And he's gonna lose quite a few folks as he's moving out of there. When you look at it inside your book on page 9, it talks about Gall of his actions, but then you look over on page 10 inside of there, when he makes it up here, he's gonna lose 3 officers and 29 enlisted. And in Reno, if you can imagine, when he gets up to here and the forces are coming up from here, who shows up down here in the south? Who do we leave first this morning? Benteen. Benteen is now, he sees Benteen making his way up here. And then later on, the log train's gonna come up here. But the Native Americans are still chasing them up here because what are they trying to do? What are the Native Americans trying to do? Get the threat as far away from the tribe as possible so that they can now start to pack up, and then they have to go Oscar Mike to start getting the women and kids and all of their stuff out. And the warriors are going to push them up onto here, and they're no longer a threat.
Right here, we are looking at what is really the core of the Benteen-Reno defense perimeter, right here on top of the hill. So they have a walkway going around, and you can really kind of follow the walkway, and as you do, you're really following the perimeter of the men of the 7th Cavalry who were up here on June 25th and 26th. And right here in the middle, well, you notice out there there's a little stake with a red cross on it. Well, this is where the only surviving doctor, assistant surgeon by the name of Henry Porter, set up kind of like an aid station to collect the wounded and treat them the best that he could right here in this depression. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but it's pretty open here. There aren't really any trees at all, so there's no shade. And I can tell you right now, the sun is beating down on the back of my neck, and it is really hot. So in addition to not having any defensible cover here, you also have these poor wounded men who are laying out in the sun. Now we're going to kind of walk through the perimeter defenses and look at some things up here, but there was something pretty important that happened before the fighting that took place on the evening of the 25th and the 26th of June. So right here on the afternoon of the 25th, you have these different companies that are forming up and establishing a perimeter here. And the D Company commander, a guy by the name of Weir, can hear gunfire in the distance. Of course, nobody knows where Custer is. So he sees a high point off to the north, and he goes to Reno and asks permission to take his company out and do a little bit of scouting and see if he can see what is going on and see where Custer's at. Of course, Reno is all panicked and flustered at this point, drunk, and he refuses permission. So Weir proceeds to just disobey the orders and take out by himself. So his company goes with him. Benteen sees it, and he's like, oh, okay, well, if Weir's going, I guess that he got permission. So he follows after, and they're going to proceed to the north to a high point here on the Little Bighorn battlefield that is now known as Weir Point. All right, we're going to go and take a look at Weir Point before coming back here and looking at the perimeter of the defenses on Reno-Benteen Hill.
You know, we're out there looking and you're thinking, someone said to me, like, can you imagine being out there, like, you got no radio or anything, no way to communicate what's happening, no way to find out where everyone else is, and that's awful. And as I thought about it, the way I always ran operations was we didn't need a radio. I want you to think about that. My last combat deployment was way back in the 1800s, where I was actually 2006. But believe me, we had radios. Every single guy carried a radio, and yet we would plan to execute operations. No one had to get on the radio. No one. That right there, the reason we're able to do that is just because of decentralized command. That's why. That's why we're able to do it. We'd go out in operations. Leif would go out in an operation. I'd be in the field as a ground force commander. Leif would be the assault force commander. Andrew would be the mobility commander. None of us would talk on the radio for a whole operation. And that's how we planned it. And the reason we were able to do that is because we had decentralized command. Because Leif knew what his mission was. He knew what the parameters were. Andrew knew what he was supposed to do. He knew what the parameters were. They knew how to interact. We had standard operating procedures. We had all these things in place. So that should be my goal. That's decentralized command. Where am I going to be? I'm going to be wherever I need to be. If I hear gunfire and it's coming for where the assault force is, I'm going to get close enough where I know where Leif is. Leif kind of knows where I'm going to be. I'm going to go to that breach point. There's something going on. I'm going to go to that breach point. Leif's going to go, I better tell Jocko what's going on. He's going to I'm going to jump on my radio and start telling Jocko everything. No, he's going to find his way back to that breach point. He's going to go, hey, boss, here's what's going on. Oh, there's some problems out in the street somewhere. Oh, guess what? I'm going to vehicle 3. He already knows I'm going to be there. Doesn't need to jump on, clog up the radio. He wants to tell me what's going on. If I need to know what's going on, that's where I'm going. You can move. You have to move. You have to get mobile. You have to put yourself in a position where you control things that are going on. This other question. Do you trust the people to go out and execute? Let me ask you this question. Do they trust you? Does your team trust you? Does Leif, when Leif is in the field and he's got to make a decision, does he trust that I have his back? When Andrew's going to make a decision to assault a building or kill some people, does he have the trust in me to be able to go, you know what? I'm pretty sure this is what I need to do right now. The ROE is in line. The enemy TTP is in line. This is what we got to do. Does he trust me? Because that's what we're trying to build. And if he's out in the field and he doesn't trust me to back him up, what good is it? He's not going to make those decisions. Does this mean he can go out there and act like an idiot? No. Does this mean he can go out there and think if he does something stupid, he's not going to be reprimanded for that? No. He knows he wants to do a good job. Like Jason said earlier, he knows he doesn't want to let me down. He doesn't want the troop down. So it's not just about do you trust them, it's do they trust you? Do you have their back?
Well, we've moved a little bit to the north now, and right here is the spot where Captain Thomas Weir is going to move up right here on this rise behind me and get a perspective of the battlefield that nobody had to the south. It's one of the things that Jocko and Leif and the other guys with Echelon Front have kind of been conveying, you know, with this part of the battlefield is the importance of getting the high ground, getting perspective, being able to see everything to make informed decisions. Weir is going to be the only one who knows what's really going on in this battle, simply because of where he is positioned. So we're gonna walk up there and take a look at the view of the battlefield as Weir saw it. the view that you have right up here on Weir Point. I mean, heck, it feels like I can see into Canada from here. This really gives you a different perspective on the battle. So Thomas Weir would have got right up to this point right here, and way off in the distance, well, he can see figures that are riding around on this point, and he says, there's Custer. So he's ready to mount up and ride in and link up with Custer. And a guy by the name of Flanagan says, hold up. He's like, you might want to take a look at that again. Hands him some field glasses, and he says, those are Indians. So Weir takes a look, and sure enough, kind of riding in circles around this hill, he sees these Native Americans, and they're shooting down. He may have been witnessing the last stand of Custer and the 5 companies that he was commanding on June 25th. Now, on the other end, the Native American warriors look back down this way, and they see Weir and Benteen and these other soldiers. Well, again, the whole goal that the Native Americans are unified on is protecting the village. Okay, that is the only thing that they are concerned about. And the village is down here. So they're done with Custer by this point. So now their attention turns to the south, and they start making their way down here towards Weir and Benteen. And these guys are looking at where they are and thinking, maybe it's better if we fall back and link back up with Reno at the defense perimeter that had already been established. We've just moved south a little bit from Weir Point. You can see the high ground up there ahead of us. And as these Native Americans are converging from the north on these 7th Cavalrymen who have moved up ahead to try and see what is going on, well, Weir and Benteen decide that they're going to fall back, but they don't tell everybody. And companies D and M get left right up there on the hill, but they don't have any orders, so they don't really know what to do. The company commander for Company M, a guy by the name of French, he's one of the really good leaders in this battle. He decides to make a call wisely and says that they are going to fall back. And as they are falling back, right here, well, Vincent Charles isn't going to make it past this point. He was a farrier, and as you can see there on the marker, was killed here on June 25th of 1876. Now, there was another company commander by the name of Godfrey who was commanding Company K, who really kind of saved a lot of these guys. He ordered his men to dismount and organized a defense as they fell back towards Reno and Benteen Hill. And this spot that we're looking at ahead of us is called Sharpshooter Ridge. This is a position that a lot of Native Americans are going to take and really make life miserable for the guys with Reno and Benteen who are going to be holding the perimeter for the duration of the battle. So Weir and Benteen and the companies that they were commanding make it back here to the defense perimeter. And you've got these Native American warriors who are converging on them from the north, and they're converging on them from the west. There's also a contingent that is off to the east. So these guys are getting surrounded here, and like their ordeal was far from over. So we're going to spend a little bit of time taking a look at some of the things here around the perimeter at the Reno-Benteen Hill. Right now we are looking at the western slopes, and down there in the valley is the Little Bighorn River. So back here is where Reno's charge had taken place. And this part of the perimeter was occupied by B Company, but they were stretched really, really thin. And if you look off in the distance there, well, you can see how, we've already seen how this ground kind of undulates, and there's dips and there's little coulees and ravines and everything like that. Makes it very easy to slip up on somebody if need be. I've turkey hunted country like this before, and I can tell you, like, I've seen turkeys like disappear in one spot and like pop up 300 yards where I didn't expect them. So anyway, B Company is right here, but they're stretched thin. So Benteen asked for M Company, which was under the command of a guy named Captain French, to help reinforce them. So on the second day, which would be June 26th, M Company would have largely reinforced this part of the line. We've moved just a little bit to the southern end of where B and M Company were positioned during the Battle of Little Bighorn. So as we are standing here looking to the north, well, you can just imagine all of these guys lined up right here. And they have, I don't know if it's as easy to see on camera, but there's a section of preserved entrenchments here on the southern part of Benteen's line. So these guys, of course, it's hot and it's dry, the ground is hard, so it's going to be difficult enough to dig as it is. In the whole command, they had about 3 or 4 shovels. So guys are digging in with hatchets, with knives, with spoons. They are dragging in dead horses and dead mules to get up behind. They're using hardtack boxes. Literally anything that they can possibly get their hands on, they are setting up here in desperation to try and put themselves, put something in between them and a bullet. But yeah, here are some of the preserved trenches. Now I think some of these, this one included, were reworked in the 1950s. But it's good for us to have it here to get an idea of the defenses that these men set up. Well, as I've already mentioned, it's hotter than heck right now. I imagine that as this video progresses, you're going to see my skin get redder and redder. And I'm pretty dang thirsty right now as it is. Well, conditions were, very similar on the 25th and 26th of June in 1876. There's no cover up here. There's no shade. There are no clouds in the sky right now, and the sun was just beating down on these guys, and they'd been without water for hours. So on the 26th, the guy who was running the field hospital, the assistant surgeon, told Reno and Benteen, these guys have to have water. The men who had been wounded were experiencing blood loss, which makes you even more thirsty. So they had to call for some volunteers to run the gauntlet down to the Little Bighorn to get some water up here. Again, we are looking at the western part of the perimeter up here on the hill. And as I mentioned, these guys are just crazy thirsty. A lieutenant by the name of Edward Godfrey said the excitement and heat made our thirst almost maddening. The men were forbidden to use tobacco. They put pebbles in their mouths to excite their glands, and some ate grass roots but did not find relief. Some tried to eat hard bread, but after chewing it a while, would blow it out of their mouths like so much flour. So these men are absolutely parched. So several of them were tasked with going down this ravine right here to go get water. So they had, I think, 4 sharpshooters that were set up to help protect these men. And then there were 15 volunteers to go down and carry water. So they were taking canteens and kettles and cups, anything that they could to get down to the edge of the river and get water and bring it back up. Okay, so they're going to be under fire the entire time. And the men who performed this action ended up being awarded the Medal of Honor. So this is called Medal of Honor Point right here at the Little Bighorn battlefield. while we're talking about the Medal of Honor, I do want to mention that the standards for the Medal of Honor have changed since the Civil War and the Indian Wars. They used to, it was kind of like the only award that they had, so they awarded it for things like going and retrieving ammunition, capturing flags, getting water, you know, things like that. And I don't know, it's just really funny how they chose to deal it out. There was a private who was one of the water carriers by the name of Mike Madden, I think he was from K Company, who went down, and he was the only one who was wounded in these runs, got shot in the leg. They later had to amputate his leg down in the valley. He was rescued by a Crow scout by the name of Half Yellowface. And for some reason, neither one of them were awarded the Medal of Honor. All the other guys who weren't wounded, but were still, you know, did some brave things, did get the award. So anyway, just kind of a funny thing how they, you know, dealt out the Medal of Honor during this time. From right here, we are looking to the east, and if you see that ridge line in the distance, well, that ridge line is where a heavy contingent of Native American warriors were staged up to attack the eastern side of the perimeter here. And in this spot, I don't know how well you can make it out, but there's an L-shaped little rifle pit right here, or a trench. And this one was restored in 1958, and when they restored it, they found skeletal remains and buttons and some pieces of uniform down here in the trench. And it revealed that there were, you know, 2 or 3 soldiers whose bodies had been interred here and then covered up. So anyway, they later determined that the bodies here were likely those of Privates Julian Jones and Thomas Meter, but they weren't killed right here. They were killed a little bit further down. So if we walk in this direction here, well, again, we're looking back here on our right toward the Little Bighorn River. So again, looking at the western area of the defense. And here we have a couple of markers that show where, in this case, Thomas Meter fell. So you can see his marker there. And right over here, Julian Jones. And you might ask, you know, how do you know that Julian Jones fell right here if his remains were found in that trench? Well, there was a guy by the name of Charles Windolph who was in Company H with both of these guys. He was the last surviving soldier from the Battle of Little Bighorn, and in his later years he came back here and showed where these 2 men had fallen. In regards to Jones, he said that he was right next to him. He had said something to him. He's like, "Hey, let's get off our coats," and said that Jones didn't move. And when he reached down and turned him over, he was dead. He'd been shot right through the heart. If you'll remember earlier when I was showing the map of the perimeter defense here on the hill, I mentioned how it was shaped kind of like a frying pan. Well, right now, this is the end of the handle of that frying pan on the far south part of the line. And if you'll notice, we have another marker to the fallen, but it looks a little bit different. This is a marker for a fallen Native American, a Sans Arc Sioux warrior by the name of Long Road. So throughout the night on the 25th going into the 26th, a number of Native Americans started making their way up closer to the line. And when firing resumed the next day, well, they were close enough to where they could actually throw, you know, rocks or dirt clods at these guys who are on the line here. And around 9 o'clock, Benteen requested some reinforcements from M Company, and they actually launched a counter assault right down this ravine right here and drove a number of these Native American warriors back, maybe even saved the line here on the south end. And here just a moment ago, we were looking at the 2 graves of those soldiers who died right here on the line, well, the one, Thomas Meter, he was actually killed as the line retired back to this position. We've moved back around to the center of the defensive perimeter. So again, right up here is where the field hospital was set up. And this spot right here was occupied by Company A. So again, this is on the east side of the perimeter. And again, they're setting up dead mules and horses and hardtack boxes and saddles and anything that they can to possibly stop or slow down a bullet. And in 1958, they did some excavating here and found the remains of a soldier from Company A, presumably, who was buried right here. So you can see it says U.S. soldier, 7th Cav, killed June 25th or 26th, 1876. So we don't know what day of the battle this soldier died. But it's very likely that he died from a bullet that was fired off from this direction. As the afternoon wore on the 26th, the fighting died down right here in this area on the hill. And the soldiers who had survived started noticing smoke coming up out of the valley. And what was happening is the Native Americans had set fire to the grass and the woods and were literally making a smoke screen so that they could withdraw. Again, their number one goal is to protect the village, so that they could withdraw to the south. And as they are withdrawing and you're kind of counting heads and seeing who's left, everybody is wondering the same thing. Where is Custer? Well, as Gibbon and the Montana column were coming down from the north along the Bighorn River and then hitting the Little Bighorn, once they started getting around here, they started finding evidence of what had happened to Custer and the 5 companies of his battalion.